long-haired weirdos, short-haired weirdos, vandals, hooligans.
The government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government, love the government, hug the
Welcome to The Politics Guys, a place for bipartisan, rational, and civil debate on American politics and policy. I'm Trey Orndorff, a political scientist at Oklahoma Christian University, and I am joined for this midweek Constitution show by Professor of Law at Chase Law School, Ken Katkin. Ken, welcome to the midweek Constitution show.
Hey, Trey, it's great to be back.
Yeah, when I first had individuals say, "Hey, take on the Constitution and go all the way through," I never imagined that it would have been this much fun. And here we are, getting ready to finish up the Bill of Rights, or the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. So we finished the Constitution. Now we're taking on the 9th and 10th Amendments today, and that means that we'll be headed on to the rest of the amendments as we get here through the summer, which also means we're going to begin to think about what we do after the Constitution. But we've got some time. Okay, and so we always start by reading the Constitution. So I'm going to read the 9th Amendment, which says, quote, "The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people," end quote. This has had a lot of debate, and it has been a big question early on in American politics what this was. And we've talked about this before, but again, it goes all the way back to the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, because during the drafting and the ratification of the Constitution, a major point of contention over the ratification of the Constitution was the Bill of Rights. The Anti-Federalists argued that without explicit protections, the federal government would be able to infringe upon individual liberties. And Federalists, of course, on the other hand, as we've talked about, contended that if you list specific rights, those rights might be the only ones that were protected. And the 9th Amendment is effectively a compromise to address that concern, to say that the Bill of Rights is not an exhaustive list. And Madison was really influenced by early documents, and he's kind of the father of the Constitution. He was influenced by earlier documents like the Virginia Declaration of Rights and the Enlightenment thinking of Locke, again, as we've talked about, to suggest that you don't necessarily have to lay it all out there. Now, the point here, though, is that you're going to get a bunch, but it doesn't really pragmatically come up frequently, right? One of the things that we've talked about on the show, Ken, has been the Dobbs decision. And I think a lot of people are like, wouldn't privacy, for example, be one of these 9th Amendment rights? But even there, the Supreme Court has not gone that route. We generally don't find rights in the 9th Amendment, so much so that, as a matter of fact, when I was in graduate school at Miami University of Ohio, we had Sandra Day O'Connor come to talk to us, and she called the 9th and 10th Amendments meaningless truisms. So what is, if any, the importance of the 9th Amendment?
Yeah, well, the 10th, as we'll talk about probably also in today's show, has been less meaningless. There's been some judicial doctrines built up under the 10th Amendment, but the 9th Amendment, as you said, to this day, the Supreme Court has never once relied on it in any case, nor has any court of appeals. So it's not even just that these cases haven't reached the Supreme Court. There's really no cases where it gets relied on for anything. And I think the reason that courts have been so hesitant to use the 9th Amendment is because it tells us that there are other rights that are retained by the people besides the rights that are listed in the Bill of Rights.
The ones we've been going through, yeah.
Yeah, but it gives us no method for identifying what those other rights would be. And I think courts have consistently been of the view that, even though the 9th Amendment does tell us that that people have other rights besides the rights listed in the Bill of Rights, there's no means of judicial reasoning that could be used to identify those rights, because it's not just that the text doesn't say what they are, but it's that there was no discussion of what they would be, in any of the ratification history. And so the courts have just, I think, seen it as they'd have to get involved in what they see as kind of unwarranted and naked judicial activism to start identifying, what rights they think are protected besides the ones that are enumerated. And they've pretty much always hesitated to do that. Although it is ironic because, as you talked about, the Madison and Hamilton, who didn't even want a Bill of Rights, Madison and Hamilton made the arguments, Hamilton especially in the Federalist Number 84,
Yes.
that there's no, it can only do harm to have a Bill of Rights because what purpose is served by declaring that things shall not be done, which there is no power to do. And what Hamilton was getting at there is that the Constitution gave Congress certain enumerated powers, and Congress wasn't supposed to be able to do anything that didn't fall within its enumerated powers. And that meant that there were, lots of rights that people have that there was no enumerated power in the Constitution that Congress could have relied on to invade those rights. So he thought that limiting the power of the government by having limited enumerated powers would inherently protect, every kind of right that Congress had no power to interfere with. But the Anti-Federalists were, suspicious, and they wanted a Bill of Rights. They pointed out that Virginia had the Declaration of Rights. Why can't we have that? And so once the politics kind of shifted in favor of the Anti-Federalists there, and there was going to be a Bill of Rights, then Hamilton and Madison kind of identified the Ninth Amendment as a way of kind of, I think, in their view, trying to show, that and there's lots of other rights that people have. Basically every right that Congress doesn't have an enumerated power to interfere with.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're really defining it by the negative implication that everything that's outside of Congress's enumerated powers is a right that the people still have. But there's no actual discussion of what those rights would be. And so that's really made it hard for courts to make much use of it.
I have often, this is another area that I'm deeply familiar with because of what I teach and do. And I have often thought that the Anti-Federalists and the Federalists kind of got a couple of things flipped. And one of them was, right, I think the Federalists were right in the sense that if you have a list of things, no matter what you do, those lists are going to get the priority. And the Anti-Federalists were wrong on that front. But on the other hand, I do think the Anti-Federalists were right that the kind of constitutional barriers that we see, we even talked about it in Article 1 as we went through, is that we tend to want to expand the meaning of the powers and constrict the meaning of the rights over time. And I don't know what necessarily is fixed for that, but I think each of them kind of had that wrong. I have often thought, though, and you kind of called it judicial activism, what are going to be those rights? I would have loved for the court to, for example, to have put privacy firmly in the Ninth Amendment.
Unfortunately, I have to end our ad-supported preview right there. We're not going to go any further on this front, but that doesn't mean that you can't join myself and Ken as we finish up the Bill of Rights. That's right. We've gone all the way through the U.S. Constitution and are now finishing up the Bill of Rights. It's really exciting, and I would love for you to be a part of it. But to do so, you need to become a member of the Politics Guys. How do you do that? The easiest way is to head to patreon.com/politicsguys. Again, that's patreon.com/politicsguys. You can support us other ways, including on Venmo, where we're at Politics Guys. You can also support the show through PayPal. All of the support links are in the show notes, as well as at politicsguys.com/support. There are so many benefits you can get from becoming a member of the Politics Guys, including not only this episode, but all of the Constitution and now the Bill of Rights with me and Ken Katkin. That analysis you've come to love is available for the entire Constitution and for the Bill of Rights, all by heading to patreon.com/politicsguys. Again, patreon.com/politicsguys, or head down to the show notes. If you're not in a position financially to get the show, don't forget, you can always reach out to us at mail@politicsguys.com. We'd also like you to know that, again, there are so many other opportunities, Discord and more, when you become a member. If you've got any other kind of questions you'd like to hit us up with, we can always be found at mail@politicsguys.com. And we're also on Facebook and X. All of that is in the show notes. So again, head to patreon.com/politicsguys to become a supporter now and finish this show. In the meantime, I would like to shout out to our amazing executive producers of the Politics Guys, who are Bruce Johnson, Wilma Marino, Daniel Toe, Ryan Beasley, and Don Oglesby. We'll be back with a new episode this weekend, and I hope you'll join us then.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group.